this great opportunity. Hello, good morning, and thank you for participating in this initiative led by Roche. It's an honor for me to be here to introduce both Carlos Martins, who's the president of Roche Diagnostics Brazil. He'll talk about the diagnostic tests, and Antonio Silva, who's a strategy and access enabler for One Roche initiative. So we'll have the perspective of discussing the aspects related to Roche Diagnostics and pharma, and how to improve clinical outcomes for patients, and also to improve the healthcare ecosystem. I want to start the session by asking Carlos, what is your perspective in terms of from diagnosis to prevention to treatment, and how the diagnostics area has been preparing itself and Roche as a whole to provide increasingly better healthcare, not only in Brazil, but across the world. Thank you, Carlos. You have the floor. Good morning, everyone, and greetings to all of the participants who are here with us. I want to thank the FIS organizers for inviting us to share our perspective about such an important subject, which is diagnosis and treatment, and how they integrate, and how we can cause a big impact on the ecosystem of healthcare in Brazil. We have huge challenges in Brazil, and we can cause an impact. Also, as an organization that is at the leading edge of technology with huge investments in innovation, not only in terms of treatment, but also, and more specifically, in terms of diagnostic tests and treatment, and how to connect these two hubs together. And of course, this involves digital processes and innovations, and we're going to talk about them today as well. So I'll start answering your question, which is a great question, and to talk about the importance of diagnosis throughout the value chain and the patient journey, from the moment they are hospitalized, from a preventative point of view. And of course, our goal is for patients not to need to be hospitalized, and so that we invest more in prevention, and so that we are more proactive in managing the healthcare ecosystem. So one of the things that we want to do is to raise the bar in terms of diagnostics. After the pandemic, that became evident, the importance of diagnostic tests. Of course, during the initial period of the pandemic, we had no vaccine, we had nothing, and unfortunately, many people passed away. But we are still concerned about implementing or finding a way to isolate patients that were positive from negative patients. And there was only one way for us to do that, by identifying these patients that were positive, and that required diagnostic tests. With PCR, for instance, Roche was the first company in the world to advance with a PCR test, and that was the only way to do that. The FDA issued an authorization to let us start using these tests. They were extremely necessary. So we started appreciating more and more the diagnostic tests, and but that does not involve only COVID. It's present across many different areas in terms of our regular checkups and making sure that we are healthy. And now I'm moving to Brazil. I'm extremely proud to be part of this team in Brazil. And with the immigration process, I'll have to take tests, not only COVID, but an entire test of panels to make sure that I'm healthy. So that involves diagnostic tests. And 70% of clinical decisions that are closely related to therapy and treatment, and we'll talk about treatment soon, 70% of our clinical decisions come from the lab, and only 2%, globally speaking, from the entire amount of funds invested in healthcare by governments and private companies is invested in diagnostics. And when it comes to Brazil, the 70% is still the same, but only 0.4% is invested in diagnostics. So the first provocation that I want to make for our discussion, and also to participants and to the government members and authorities that are listening to us, is that we need more investment in diagnostics, because it is for prevention purposes. It's an investment that will make us more proactive, will enable us to keep patients outside of hospital setting. And we all know that when we're working on curing a patient, when the patient's already ill, that's more expensive for everyone, for the healthcare system, and the situation is much more severe for the family, for the patient, because they're in an active process of trying to find out ways to manage their health. So this month, with the celebration of its 125th anniversary, and we're releasing a campaign which says that if you see something abnormal in your body, talk to your physician, ask for a checkup, go to a hospital, go to a clinic, talk to your friends if necessary, because it's preferable to find out first if you have something. We often think that we have negligible pain and that will go away in a few days, but it's really important to investigate that. And that's where I think that the value of diagnostics is huge, and it's part of the patient's value chain, and it has to be combined with treatment. And there are several ways to do that. For instance, we have a program with the Albert Einstein Hospital, where we have one of our digital diagnostic solutions that allow us to identify cancer patients in terms of which stage they're at, and the type of information that comes from the different medical services, from pathology, from lab imaging tests, hematology. So these physicians, these healthcare specialists need to be able to have access to that information to make the best decision for our patients. So we have this digital solution that precisely allows us to identify not only the stage the patient is at, but any and all information available, and disseminate them to every specialist, and how that can be connected to the next decision making step, and so that we can offer the best quality of life to our patients. But there are other examples where diagnostics add more value to the process. Another such example is a campaign that we're launching for women's health, because we know that cervical cancer is caused, most of them, by papillomavirus, and it's curable. And even better, it can be detected before it becomes a threat. So we are launching a very strong campaign in Brazil for all Brazilian women to take the screening against papillomavirus, because that's really a huge problem. Every 90 minutes in Brazil, a woman passes away. And we're extremely concerned about that. We want to cause a positive impact in that regard. We're offering solutions that range from enrollment, people managing demographic data, applying the tests, and disclosing the results, and also communicate them to physicians, because if they test positive, the patient will have to be followed up. There are other examples. Of course, we combine our diagnostics with a treatment at Roche, and everything starts with research and development. Our teams are increasingly more working together and defining joint strategies between which tests must be developed based on the drugs we're working on, but also the other way around, which drugs should be developed based on the tests that we are applying. So this is really an integrated strategy that intends to really improve the quality of life of our patients. And we are really, really focused on offering that to our patients in Brazil. So, Vitor, those are my initial words. Thank you. Thank you, Carlos. That was great. You gave us an excellent perspective in terms of the importance of diagnostics and how they're connected to prevention and treatment. So now I'll take this opportunity that you created to ask Antonio, who's highly experienced at Roche, about his perspective about the treatment and what a difference Roche is making in that regard. Thank you, Victor. Initially, I want to thank the FIS initiative for the invitation. And I want to greet Carlos and yourself, because, sharing this conversation, sharing this discussion about what we as a company, as you said, very well put it, one Roche, we're not simply isolated departments. We're an integrated company. There are Brazilian songs that say that, well, it's like soccer without a ball, or an airplane without the wings. And unfortunately, if you talk about diseases, diagnostics are at the base of everything. Because that's where you can work with prevention. And when you look at the patient journey till you get to treatment, there's all these steps and after treatment as well, with monitoring, follow-up, all of that involves the treatment department. We from the pharma division, we always look into the unmet needs. Roche is an innovative company. It's a business decision. It's not that it's better or worse than any other company, but we focus on, well, if Alzheimer's is a problem, we focus on offering solutions to that. Rare diseases, the same thing. And why not oncology? And as we know, if you look at the numbers at 2035, we're going to have another pandemic of cancer cases, as it were. So we take on this integrated approach, how we can help the healthcare system so that it can offer diagnostics and or prevention. We don't want to be patients, right? As Carlos said, everybody wants to be healthy. So if we're able to take on integrated approaches where the person lives healthily, we also take off the pressure from the healthcare system and take away the expenses and which are just natural, and we can focus funds on therapies for people that really need them. So what we've been doing is to work on target therapies. With oncology, we've been looking at every stage. The faster I treat the patient, the more quickly or the better I'll be able to have a chance at reaching the cure, whether it is a breast cancer or any other type of cancer. Or sometimes you can extend the survival of our patients to limits that were unthinkable in the past. And as Carlos said, everything requires this integrated approach. and how we look at things. And our dream, our ambition is really, and obviously for that to happen, we have to pave the way towards legal framework, legal safety, security, and data transparency, and generate information, because we want to offer value propositions that integrate the first step of the patient journey with the last step of that journey with diagnostics and treatment. There are examples of that. We're already working on those types of solutions, and our goal is to transform that into a reality. Certainly, that's no easy feat. You can't do it alone. So our invitation is for everyone to sit together with us to discuss solutions. And we learn a lot with the diagnostics market, because we see that it is a provider of services that go way beyond products alone. And at Pharma, we also discuss that, and we think about how to create a proposal that will offer better care to our patients and give them better support and more adequate support. I think that's the way forward, and this has led us to learn a lot. As Carlos said, that there are regulatory frameworks, digitalization, how to do that, and so on and so forth. But I think that the take-home message is that there is a company that is willing to establish alliances and to challenge the status quo of how we operate today. COVID has taught us a lot. Of course, it's been painful. It's still painful, but we've found regulatory frameworks to make progress. Telemedicine, for instance, is a reality in Brazil. So let's leverage the opportunity. Our commitment, our long-term ambition is to raise the bar of innovation by 3 to 5-fold, and offer it to society with a huge financial impact. That's a huge undertaking, right? But with collaboration, with the involvement of all of the players, and with forums like this one, where we are able to discuss our ambitions and our goals, I think that's the way forward if we want to establish sustainable alliances. Thank you. That's perfect, Antonio. That's a great explanation. You gave us a very clear perspective of everything that Roche has been doing, and this connection and the importance of this overview of this perspective from diagnostics to treatment. And picking up on what you said, I want to ask Carlos about his opinion about the correct diagnosis for the right patient at the right time. How has Roche Diagnostics been working in that regard in terms of offering personalized medicine? And what are the impacts, in your opinion, in terms of improving public health?
I believe you're on mute. Oh, yes, my apologies. It was on mute. Can you hear me now? Yes, we can. It's actually a very important question, and I'd like to comment on what Antonio said about access. At Roche, we really understand that we do need innovation. We are a leader in innovation in the health sector. We have the highest rating for R&D, 13 billion Swiss francs, and there is a huge commitment from our company and to bringing even more innovation.
And that is fundamental. And you asked me about the ideal test for the ideal patient. The first thing that we have to do is to sit together with authorities and define what we can optimize. I remember that 15 or 20 years ago, unfortunately, for a lady that tested positive for breast cancer, that could be like a death sentence. And that's not the case today. And it would be a death sentence because just to be diagnosed, it would take you 2 to 3 weeks. Whereas now you can get a much faster diagnosis. And it's these things that make a difference. It's innovation and technology that make a difference in patients' lives. So the fact that you can get your test results in a couple of hours, that can make a difference in terms of your quality of life and between life and death, ultimately. So I think that there's a lot of technology that has to be maximized, and it already exists. We're constantly working together to offer more innovation and offer more tools to improve patients' lives in Brazil. A fundamental thing that I think that we have to implement more and more is the digitalization system. And every 80 days, currently, the amount of data online is doubled. Information that is anywhere in the social media or the digital information channels gets doubled. Of course, if you're a physician and you want to keep yourself updated, you have to study 24/7. Tools such as artificial intelligence have to be more maximized. And there are cases where we are already maximizing that. The example of oncology, for example, in the oncology labs, only the anatomopathologists were the ones able to interpret the slides, whereas now we have artificial intelligence software and algorithms that propose diagnostics. And of course, it's the physicians that validate, it's the physicians that make a decision, but we are now resorting to artificial intelligence, and there are many other tools as well. So there are ways for us not only to be more precise in terms of the results that we can offer our patients, but also to be quicker. There are many examples. We have a technology that's for cardiac marker tests where you go to a hospital or a private clinic with chest pain, and 8 minutes later, you have a result for entroponin or others, which are markers that are able to tell whether you're having a heart attack. And they also give you the trend of what is going to happen with you and your heart over the course of the next few weeks or days. So we have the technology, and there are good results already, but we have to sit together with authorities, with governments, with regulators, and with everyone that could have an impact on this sector and get this discussion going. I know there's a lot being done already, but there is room for more because Brazil is a huge country with over 220 million people. It's an ocean of opportunities that we must leverage. Excellent, Carlos. Thank you. That was really good. You talked about access and how to democratize it to improve patient outcomes. And in doing so, certainly the costs of healthcare will be lowered and access will be broadened. So, Antonio, my question to you about access, the right treatment for the right patient at the right time. What are the initiatives that are now underway to provide increasingly more access to Brazilians, both in the public healthcare setting and the private setting? What are your efforts? We know that it depends on diagnostics. So how is Roche Pharma been dealing with that?
This is a question that we discuss all the time at Roche. So for me, unfortunately, we do have two different Brazils. We have Brazil in the private sector, where we have technologies that come through the regulatory framework and through the National Health Agency in a faster manner, and they give access to a limited number of people, which is, of course, large already. But when we look at other people that depend on the SUS, the National Health System, the public health system, we have to look at personalized, tailor-made medicine. Our challenge, I would say, as a company, as to how we can generate and make therapies available for all other patients that do need this, and they need this more and faster. When we look at the situation, it's something that we have been discussing at Roche. How can we create access? Because it's a different way of working. We do have models we are looking at, and we are copying, bringing from different countries that managed to generate fast innovation for tailor-made medicine. We have to think about that because, yes, unfortunately, there is an inequality. In the private system, a patient can have an early diagnosis of breast cancer, for instance. In the public sector, usually patients are diagnosed at a more advanced stage, and that can be then transferred to lungs. So I echo what Carlos said. We do need dialogue. We do need to look at that carefully because, of course, the same formulas that we've been working with in the past, they might not work. So we need to be open to collaboration, to search for alternatives. And to do that, we need to talk. If we think about lung cancer, for instance, we currently see that lung cancer, when you have access to tests such as Foundation, which gives you this mapping, we can plan the initial therapy, but also second, third, fourth lines. And this is a huge benefit that physicians have in their hands. They can look at patients in a different manner. And they will start planning right from the beginning. It's not just about treating that specific moment. We can already foresee the alternatives moving forward in this therapy. Same thing for breast cancer. As Carlos said, currently we have different types of cancer that are curable. And our work as a company is to follow on the regulatory framework, both in the private and public sectors. We have been submitting this in the traditional system and according to regulations. But we are also working very hard and looking at other experiences. Uruguay is a case in point. They have a very interesting project, what they call a flat rate. Regardless of the treatment line, whatever the patient needs, we can predict the costs for treating women, for treating different patients. So this is being discussed. We need legal safety, we need transparency, but this is all possible because we have data available for companies. And I'm sure that after the COVID pandemic, we now know that we cannot do anything alone. And I'm not speaking about us at Roche. We all need each other as a society. And we will be able to reach our ambition collaborating with everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Antonio. Thank you for your comments. Carlos, I wanted to talk a bit about the pandemic. During the pandemic, Roche Diagnostics and Roche Pharma, you really worked together searching for the best possible solutions for the private sector, for the public health sector in different municipalities and states, and also working with hospital groups, labs, clinics. And I do feel this in my everyday work at Roche for the last 2 years. And I always have meetings that bring together diagnosis and pharma, the two sides of the company. As leaders of this company, seasoned leaders that you are at Roche, how do you intend to move on with this work? And I think if we do this work inside the company, it will have a huge impact on clients. because clients do want that. They do want these two sides of the company to work together. Can you please comment a bit on that? Carlos, could you begin? Well, I think that myself and Antonio, we are collaborating more and more. 5 years ago, we used to be two completely vertical and separated divisions, and we focused on our specific businesses maybe 8 years ago. And at a certain point, the senior management of the company about 5 years ago decided that we needed to have a strategic agenda. And by that, we mean a 10-year strategic agenda. And we have 7 main pillars. The first pillars is exactly what you said, one Roche, one single company. Our goal as an organization, first and foremost, is to have a positive impact in society, in patients, improving the quality of lives of people, helping save more lives, and working directly with health professionals, with governments, with insurance companies in Brazil and in the world. This is our first goal, to ensure a better quality of life and save more lives. And if we do meet this goal, all other objectives, even financial objectives, are a consequence. That's the reasoning behind the strategic target. Patient comes first, and then everything else. And of course, the pandemic accelerated all of that. We've had a very challenging process. Roche was the first, as you said, was the first to launch a PCR COVID test, and we've launched 10 additional tests after this one. Different types of tests that measure different things, and we can provide a diagnosis for COVID at the different stages of COVID. And this really accelerated this strategic process. We had to act together as an organization. Diagnosis had the tests, but pharma had also some medication that could have an impact, a positive impact in treating COVID, mostly in acute patients. So we had to join forces. We were forced to do that, to talk to governments, to health authorities. You know, the pressure we faced as an organization to provide millions and millions of tests, which we didn't have at first. We had to increase our production lines by 1,000%, and still it wasn't enough. Because the whole world, 7 billion people, wanted COVID tests and wanted COVID drugs. So it was a very challenging period, but I think it really brought us together as an organization, not just due to our purpose or because we knew that we were focused, and when we are focused together, we are better. We are better when we collaborate, when we work together. Results are better. But the underlying strategic goal also helped, because this goal allows us to face these challenges together. So we have more and more meetings together. Both Marcelo and I, or Antonio and myself. We have a large strategic meeting every 3 months, and then we have this large forum every year. And it reaches our executive committee, but it's drilled down to the whole company. And that's where we discuss how we will make this happen. So the organization is really focused so that we have an increasing positive impact in society. Great, Carlos, and both you and Antonio, Bruno Souza, you have really been working for that in the company. Antonio, you have a lot of experience in Brazil, right? This new way of working at Roche Pharma, I have been seeing what we call the PJPs and the PCPs. You can talk about these acronyms. They are really concerned about having a clear map of the patient journey, of how we conduct diagnosis. Can you tell us a bit about this work? And I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate both of you. I do see this integration as I've never seen before, actually. Thank you, Victor. As Carlos said, I really think that here we serve our clients and we serve people who need us. So, it makes complete sense to work in an integrated manner. When we look at the patient's journey, I cannot think about therapy alone because diagnosis adds a value to the health system. It reduces costs, it brings agility, it provides therapy. And oftentimes we don't even come to the point of needing therapy or of needing very expensive drugs. So the value of the whole patient journey starts with diagnosis. Our new operational model, we don't have anymore the people who visit the physicians. We really decided that the first point of contact with the client is aimed at understanding the whole journey and understanding where we can really have an impact to make the system more fair, more equitable, and sustainable. And we have the three sides of the equation, of course. We have Roche, we have the health insurance provider, and we have, of course, patients. That's our focus, bringing benefit to patients. I see that people are happy with this model. I see people happy with this work. And this creates magnetism. We use this word, magnetism, between people, and everyone is working together towards these solutions. So it has been a pleasure, and it's in our hands, all of us. Health is not a divided thing. It's an integrated aspect, and we have to benefit patients by thinking like that. Thank you, Antonio. We have a couple of minutes before we finalize this panel. And I'd like to thank both Carlos and Antonio for your excellent explanations about how Roche, Diagnosis, and Pharma, the two divisions, are working together to make a difference in society. And both of you made it very clear how you are aligned, you as two senior leaders who have been working at Roche for many years. So for me, as part of the Roche team, it was an inspiring experience to hear both of you. So I wanted to ask you just for your final remarks, first Carlos and then Antonio. Thank you. It has been an honor to be here with you. It has been my honor, Victor. Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank FIS. I just wanted to say two things. First, we need to invest more in diagnosis infrastructure in Brazil. Not just in the private sector, of course, the private sector is a bit more advanced, but in the public health system, the SUS system in Brazil. We need more debate with the government to bring more investment, being more proactive, and having less people admitted to the hospital thanks to diagnosis. So of course, this takes an initial investment, but in the long term, we will save money, we'll reduce costs, and we will improve the lives of patients, of course. Second thing I wanted to say is about patients, the Brazilian population. If you have a problem in your body, if you feel something, please check it out. Please go check this. Roche is a 125-year-old company, and we do see that it's really important that patients be proactive. And I think that patients are becoming increasingly proactive and autonomous. So it's up to us as human beings, to check constantly on our bodies. Thank you very much. See you next time. Thank you, Victor. Thank you to the FIS initiative. Carlos, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. We always learn a lot. I think that my final message is collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. Whether it's inside of our company, we cannot achieve our goals if we work alone. If we work together, we can go far away. So collaboration, everyone sitting around the table, having a dialogue, because that is how we generate well-being and we help the people who need us the most. Because someone who is undergoing a health problem, we have to serve these people. So that is my message. We are here to collaborate, and we are searching proactively for solutions that do not exist yet, but that can be made available for everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you, Antonio. Thank you, Carlos. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, FIS.